Who can we call the greatest teenage talent in football history? Many fans would point out Kylian Mbappe in 2017 as the #1 rookie they've ever seen. 2007 Messi might also be the best wonderkid in football's history, but there's been a lot of young stars who had crazy breakout seasons. 2004 Cristiano, 96 Ronaldo. Maybe you'd go with the youngest Premier League player of the season, 98 Michael Owen, or 04 Wayne Rooney. But maybe the better way to look at it is this: a list of the youngest players to make it to the Ballon d'Or podium at 20 years of age or younger. As you can see, this list is extremely exclusive. You've got Eusebio, who dragged Benfica to their first UCL title in '62. A 20-year-old Ronaldo, who scored 47 goals in 49 games, missing the Ballon d'Or by just a single voting point back in '96. And then there's Messi, whose third place in the '07 Ballon d'Or foreshadowed the takeover that was coming. 2018 Mbappe nearly cracked the top of this list as a 19-year-old world champion, but he fell just one place short of the podium. This is already a lineup of the best teenagers football has ever seen. And now, that list has a new face. His name is Lamine Yamal. At just 17, he broke into a club that's been untouched for nearly 2 decades. And he's still 3 years younger than when any of these legends first blew up. That's unheard of. Is Yamal the greatest teenager in football history? How do you even figure out who's really the best across generations? You can look at goals, but that doesn't always translate into being the best. You can use the eye test, but our eyes can be deceiving. However, there's one way to attempt to measure, and that's by looking at the gap between a player and their peers. Is Pelé a better player than Messi? I don't think so, but Pelé's gap over anyone in his own era is probably as wide as Messi's, and that's why they're both in the GOAT conversation. Is there still a gap between Yamal and the best player in the world? Or is this version of Yamal peaking higher than any rookie we have ever seen before? Well, there's a pile of evidence that suggests he is. Last season, Yamal scored 18 goals and assisted 25 times, which was the 9th best GA in the entire game. That's a big gap from the most productive player of the year, Rafinha, who had 60 goals and assists combined. But if Yamal only ranked 9th in GA, why does he have the best rating by WhoScored, by FootMob, and is 4th by SofaScore? What makes him stand out over those guys? Yamal had incredible numbers last season, just not the ones everybody usually looks at. Goals don't just happen out of nowhere. You need all the stuff that builds them up. The dribbles, the passes, the runs. That's playmaking, and Yamal's so good at it that a lot of fans already see him as the best in the world. And honestly, after seeing the stats, you kinda have to. For example, look at this graph of the most dribbles made last year. Even towards the bottom, you find great players like Florian Wirtz and Musiala. Keep going and you'll find the biggest contender for last year's Ballon d'Or, Vini Jr., and with almost identical numbers, are Kylian Mbappe and Jeremy Doku. Clearly, 3 of the greatest dribblers this sport has seen in years, until Yamal showed up and completely blew the lid off of just how creative one guy can be in this new football age. In fact, Yamal's dribbling is only comparable to the GOATs themselves. When Yamal played against Inter in the Champions League semi-finals, he recorded 14 dribbles in a single match. Only 2 other players at 21 or younger have ever done that in a UCL game: Messi and Cristiano. He's shoulder to shoulder with the GOATs and no one else. And yet, his passing might be even sharper than his dribbling. According to Squawka, which has a database that tracks big chances created, only 4 players surpassed the 20-plus mark last season: Rafinha and Saka with 22, uninspired Olise and Salah, who were the catalyst for 2 incredible offenses. But even among offensive juggernauts, Yamal was above everyone else. With 28 big chances created, he was the most dangerous creator in the world. And he wasn't even 18. In the last 10 years, the only player who created more big chances in La Liga was the one and only Lionel Messi. Not Cristiano, not Mbappe, and not even Neymar. The only guy who created more chances than this kid was the best to ever do it. And I got this feeling that he could even top some of those seasons down the line. These are Neymar's numbers from 2015-16, one of his best seasons in his prolific career. And these are Yamal's numbers from his season. Yeah, just a couple of years ago, Yamal was playing for Barcelona's youth team, and now he's playing like prime Neymar. The one area Yamal still lags behind? It's finishing. Even with more shots than Neymar, Yamal couldn't reach half his goals. Which brings us to the one glaring pitfall for Yamal's case, as truly the greatest any teenager has ever played: shooting. A clutch player at his best and a wasteful player at his worst. And this is the one factor that may prevent him from peaking higher than any other prospect. There's three core skills that define greatness in football: passing, dribbling, and finishing. He's as creative as the best passers and best dribblers of all time, and he's still as inconsistent a finisher as any other rookie. Meanwhile, there have been many great youngsters who have been incredible finishers: Ronaldo, Maradona, Cruyff, Fowler, Mbappe, Haaland, even Neymar and Aguero were amazing goal-scoring machines right out of the gate. They all posted 30-plus goal seasons under the age of 19. R9 had the best numbers in the world, while also being one of the greatest dribblers. Yamal is not near 30 goals, and that's not because he wasn't trying. The player with the most shots taken last season has Yamal as the second most persistent chance taker, ahead of Rafinha and Dembele. But despite all those attempts, he only scored half as many goals as any of these players. You don't need to be an analyst to see Yamal's got a lot of room to grow with finishing, and many fans would argue that unprecedented playmaking mastery is not enough to overcome the fact that Yamal is considerably worse at shooting than others are. But I think it is. Yamal has 43 goals and assists this season. That's the most by any young player in Europe in the last 30 years. Robbie Fowler used to hold the record when he managed an insane 42 GA back in '94. Raul and Owen came very close during the 90s as well. And just so you can grasp how insane some of these seasons are, notice how Messi only managed 20 GA when he was 19. 2008 Aguero also made it to the 40s when he was still playing for Atletico. And both Mbappe and Sancho had back-to-back legendary seasons as youngsters. But the guy with the biggest GA here is Yamal. With 43 goal contributions, he has the largest number Europe has seen in recent decades. But most of the players in this list are either 18 or 19, and a big chunk of Yamal's hype is that he's only 17. When you look at goals and assists before the age of 17, you start to see just how far ahead Yamal really is. The 17-year-old who came closer to Yamal's numbers was Bojan Krikic, the guy who was supposed to be the next Messi. But he only managed 18 goal contributions. That's 25 short of Yamal. In today's football, no team is even close to this level of production. The only players in history who managed this output before 18 were Maradona and R9, two of the greatest talents in 100 years of football history. And yet, Yamal is on top of both of them while playing at the highest level. So, besides already being one of the best dribblers and one of the greatest playmakers, Yamal's overall numbers are also among the best we've ever seen at his age. So he has to be the best teenager ever, right? Well, there's a player who before the age of 18 had 126 official goals and assists. A number that will most likely remain unbroken for a long time, and by far the biggest GA ever by a teenager. I'm of course talking about Pelé, the greatest contender for the youngest player to dominate the sport title. Pelé doesn't just hold the title for the best numbers, for a 17-year-old. He holds the 5th most productive season of all time as a 17-year-old. With 83 GA in a calendar year, this Pelé version had more contributions than prime Cristiano accomplished in his most productive season, only beaten by Messi at the absolute peak of his powers. And Pelé wasn't just delivering empty numbers, he was a winner. In the 1958 World Cup, a 17-year-old Pelé scored a hat-trick against France in the semi-finals and 2 goals in the final against Sweden, making him the youngest ever to win the biggest trophy in all sports. It may be the biggest achievement for a rising star in the beautiful game. Kylian Mbappe did a similar feat when he carried France to the World Cup trophy as a 19-year-old. Yamal hasn't gotten the chance to win the World Cup since it only happens once every 4 years. But Yamal's trophy cabinet is not empty. In his second professional season, Yamal has managed to win the second most wanted international trophy, the European Cup, and 2 Spanish leagues, the same number as Cristiano achieved in 9 years at Real Madrid. And Yamal won all those trophies while carrying his team with clutch moments and brilliant playmaking. Yamal is a winner. But is Yamal more dominant than Pelé was as a teen? Well, remember the Ballon d'Or list at the beginning of the video? Pelé is missing from it because before '95, the Ballon d'Or could only be given to European players. Pelé, being a Brazilian who played in the 60s, wasn't qualified to win the award during his career. But in 2016, France Football published an international revised version of the trophy before '95. And in this revised version, Pelé earned 7 Ballon d'Or, making him the second player with the most prestigious award, only behind Messi's 8. And if we take this list as the official one, Pelé was not only the youngest player to reach the podium of football's MVP award, but he was also the youngest player to win it as a 17-year-old, and again as an 18-year-old, and again as a 19-year-old, and again as a 20-year-old. Winning 4 Ballon d'Ors in a row is something only Messi has done, but Pelé did it as a teenager. At his peak, Pelé wasn't just the most dominant teen ever, he was arguably the most dominant player this game has ever known. This is why he's probably the greatest teenager of all time. But this happened so many years ago, in a game so much different that many fans just act like Pelé never even existed. If we don't look at the whole history of the sport, we can't really call Yamal the best teenager in football history. But since there is barely any Pelé footage from his younger years, we also can't really say we've seen Pelé play. Whether you wanna consider Pelé for this debate is up to you, but it's still pretty crazy that we have to go back 70 years to find someone better than Yamal is at his age. When I actually watch Yamal play, it's not only the metrics, but my eyes that tell me he has greater talent than anyone I've personally seen. It feels like Yamal is ahead of a young Messi and a young Cristiano in the greatest rookie conversation. 2 legends who dominated the entire football world for decades. But that doesn't mean Yamal will reach their level. Some talents just shine early but never level up after that. Owen was one of the best teens ever, but he played better at 17 and 18 than at any other age. Ronaldo was arguably the best talent the game has witnessed, but injuries stopped him from having a consistent career. And 19-year-old Neymar was so unreal that he got us all watching the Brazilian league. But a lack of focus kept him from reaching his full potential. While other players may not have been so talented, they put in the work and kept growing. Cristiano wasn't a greater prospect than Ronaldo, Neymar, or even Owen. But there's no doubt he became a greater player. Yamal is a generational talent, but talent alone doesn't guarantee a generational career. For now, all we can do is judge the raw ability, which he has plenty of. Ask yourself, how many players in football history have been arguably the best player in the world before they even turned 20? A lot of guys have worn that crown, but how many were talented enough to hold on to it this young? The list isn't very long. Pelé, Ronaldo, maybe Messi or Mbappe, maybe 4 or 5 players at most, all of which ended up on most people's top 10 all-time list. Yamal's still a teenager for a while, but there's no doubt he is already one of the greatest talents in football history.